no matter what kind of tough times you're going through, no matter how hard things get, no matter how many failures you have to endure, that if you persevere and you push through, you will make it. You will break down that glass wall that's in front of you. And just remember too, it is a glass wall that's in front of you. It's not a rock wall. It's not a brick wall.
Not cement.
It's a glass wall. You can break through it, right?
Yeah.
When you hit the cement wall, that's the end of life.
Welcome to the Deals in Aloha podcast, where we talk about real estate deals, hope to leave a lasting impact with our audience, and of course, spread aloha. You can find us on all social media platforms at Kamohai and Tristyn. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast so we can
grow it
and beat the algorithms. But we are excited today. Let's go.
So today we have, I'm not going to butcher this, Mike Cavaggioni.
Perfect.
Yay.
Nice.
He is a veteran, retired U.S. Navy officer, served 20 years, and now he's a licensed real estate agent, financial coach, investor, and podcast host.
That's right.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
We were talking a little bit offline, but I'm excited to have you on because I've heard a lot about you and I've seen you speak, but we've never been able to sit down and have like a real intimate conversation, and that's one of the cool things about having a podcast is I get to do that today. So
Absolutely. We had like a little 3-minute,
Hi.
hello, how you doing type
nice
deal
to
at
meet
one
you.
of the meetups, and that was about it.
So all of you guys are going to experience Mike today. We are also doing
Or you
that.
might already know him.
Yeah.
I'll just apologize in advance for all of you.
Well, let's
Love
just
that.
jump right in. How did you get into real estate?
Oh, okay. That's a loaded question.
It is, I know.
Okay.
Start
so
at the very beginning.
the very beginning. Now we're going to get deep.
Right.
Okay. So the very beginning, it actually goes back to when I was younger,
Okay.
right? When I was a young kid, hanging out in upstate New York. I'm from Long Island, New York, right? But I would go upstate to visit my aunt and uncle up there.
Okay.
And my uncle was a very avid real estate investor.
Oh.
Right. So he worked for the state as a corrections officer. And, throughout his time, he started buying, duplexes, triplexes,
Really?
quadplexes in
So
upstate
cool.
New York.
Yeah.
And, I asked him one day, I was like, Uncle, why do you have
All
so
these-
many homes?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what's going on
Yeah.
here? What are you doing with these? He said, he's like, you know what, kid? He's like, I'm going to retire from the state one day. It's not going to be enough. So I want to supplement my retirement with something else that's going to pay me. He's like, and when I retire, I want to just go collect rent checks between the 1st and the 5th and be able to wear whatever I want to wear and not have to worry about anybody telling me what to do.
I
And
love
said,
that.
wow. Yeah. So that stuck with me for a very long time. It was kind of always in the back of my head. And fast forward to me graduating from high school, I joined the Navy, and I wanted to get out of where I lived at in New York. So similar, very similar background story to what you guys have when it comes to my childhood. Spent a lot of time visiting family, in and out of jail, in and out of rehab.
Yeah.
All those good things, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, joining the Navy was a way to get away from all of that and just be out on my own and just do my own thing.
Love that.
So while I was in the Navy, the real estate thing kind of just fell to the wayside.
Yeah.
Never really thought about it again until I did my recruiting tour back in 2006. I was renting a place in Charlottesville, Virginia, and newly married. And I told my wife, I said, hey, we're married. If we want to have kids, we should go buy a house next. That should be the next step, right?
Yeah.
That's the next logical
It's
thing
what
to
you
do.
think you should
Totally.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. So we go and we buy a house about 45 minutes away from where I worked, but it was a beautiful area in the Shenandoah Valley, Waynesboro, Virginia. And we bought that in July of 2007. I just turned 22. And I was
No
like,
way.
22,
Good
got my first
job.
home.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
2007
Yes.
though. That's
Yep.
Yeah,
that's
right?
a trigger year. So
I bring up the year for a
preface the
reason,
year.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And for people that know me that kind of know this story, they know the reason why I bring up the year, right? And for those that are listening right now, I bring up the year because we all know what happened, the next 2 years after that, 2008, 2009,
Yeah.
the real estate crash. And it was a very painful process for me because, here I was, I just got orders to go back to Norfolk, Virginia, which was about 3.5 hours away. And I was going to a ship. So I said, okay, it's fine. I'll go to a ship, I'll deploy. My wife can stay in the house.
Yep.
I'll, stay on the ship. It's fine.
Right.
Well, I was going to deploy and my wife's like, well, I don't want to be so far away from everybody. Like we don't have anybody here, no family. Everybody's back in New York. I want to go back to New York.
Yeah.
So she goes back to New York to stay with her parents. And I'm like, okay, I have this vacant house. So I listed it for sale.
Yeah.
And, that's when I found out what really happened in 2008, 2009, because when I listed it for sale, it was almost like it was a joke. I paid $250,000 for that house. I wound up short selling it a couple of years later. And I say a couple of years because I did rent it out for a while at a loss just to hold on to it.
Right.
But I wound up short selling it in 2012 for $157,000.
Wow.
And
2
I
years
said,
later.
yeah, I said, this real estate thing
Is
might not be for me.
Not for
Yeah.
me.
Dude.
It sucks.
So it kept me out of the game for a long time. I didn't even want to think about buying a home. So fast forward, I put in a commissioning package to commission as an officer. I got selected. I commissioned and said, okay, well, do I want to buy a house yet? No, not yet.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and we're going to rent. And we got on the waiting list for the military officer housing.
Okay.
And we finally got into that and we stayed there for 5 years.
Wow.
And while we were living there, I deployed to Iraq and I did a boots on ground deployment over there. And we had, at the time, a lot of credit card debt, personal loans, things like that, still recovering from the short sale.
Yeah.
Because I had to make up for a huge loss, right?
Totally.
I was paying, both the rent and the mortgage, for where we were living at the time.
Yeah.
And let's just say I racked up all my credit cards and maxed them out. And so we got to a point where it was like, okay, we need to figure out how we're going to get past all this debt. And we started following Dave Ramsey's baby steps,
Yeah.
And I was okay, steps 1 through 3 makes sense. After that, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like, I want to, have the entire amount that I need for a home, like
That'll
cash,
take
right?
a long time.
It's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
Or a 15-year loan might be a little bit too much to ask for as well.
Right.
And on top of that, I thought I lost my VA loan benefit anyway from short selling the home.
Oh, okay.
So there was all this stuff that was in my head
Yep.
that was kind of like, stay away from real estate right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, we started paying off all of our debt. And in a 2-year span, and this is when we found out we were coming to Hawaii as well. Over a 2-year span, we paid off over $40,000 in credit card debt and personal loans.
Nice.
And then I had $40,000 in the bank.
Yeah.
Cool.
And we did
that's
this all
amazing.
with one income,
Wow.
right? Just my income because
Yeah.
my wife was staying at home with the kids and homeschooling, right?
Yeah.
So we did it just off of my income. So it was very disciplined,
Yeah.
very methodical,
Yeah.
and it was painful.
Yeah.
We also did the envelope system. We tried every little thing that we could to make
Wow.
sure we were sticking to our budget, right?
Right.
And our
Yeah.
spending plan. So we get out to Hawaii and I said, okay, the reason why I wanted to pay off all these credit card debts and, pay off all these personal loans and have no debt and have this money saved up because I want to buy a house. So when we go to Hawaii, I was like, I want to buy a house. I was looking at the real estate market. I said, even if we just go there for 3 years and then wind up coming back to the mainland, like it's going to be good. Like the home will appreciate enough. We'll make a nice little chunk of change.
Totally.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to do this. Right.
Yeah.
So we get out here, we start looking, and this was in 2018. And
Okay.
even then we're looking at homes, we're putting in offers, getting rejected.
Yeah.
Offering full asking price, we'll pay closing costs. They're saying no.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I guess out here you have to offer more than the asking price.
Yeah.
So finally on the 5th house, we put in, we didn't do it. I said, if this one doesn't go, we're going to go and put in more than the asking price on the next one, right? So this one, it went through. They accepted it. And I said, okay, great. So we start
Nice.
going through the process. Somehow I was pre-approved, but I didn't have like my VA certificate of eligibility yet, right? So I'm pre-approved for a loan. And then we contact the VA and we start the process to get the VA home loan.
Right.
And they said, well, hey, sir, your record's flagged. We need to take a look at this. And they said, oh, yeah, it says right here, you're not eligible for your VA home loan benefit because of this short sale in 2012.
Wow.
Dude.
And I said, okay, well, I guess that's out. I guess we're going to have to do like a conventional,
Conventional.
Do a FHA, put 3.5% down. I was like,
Right.
this is why I saved up this money.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Right.
wanted to use it for renovations,
Right.
but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, hang on a second. There's a note here. Let me read this real quick. And they read the note. It turns out the lender that we had back in Virginia, they have 180 days to file the paperwork for the VA to pay them their portion. They filed it on the 181st day.
No
Wow.
way.
So they did not get paid.
Right.
And the VA said, you still have your benefit.
Oh.
So I said,
Wow.
okay, someone's looking out for me.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
great.
amazing.
That's wild.
So that was a win.
Yeah,
right? So
huge
we
win.
buy the home out in Neva Beach, and we're super excited. We start doing our renovations, and then I realized how expensive renovations are in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
I said, this $40,000 is not enough. We already blew through it.
Right.
So yeah, that was kind of like where we got back into it. Said, okay, cool, we've got our own home now.
Yeah.
I met up with a friend of mine that had just gotten stationed out here that was also on the Theodore Roosevelt with me. And I knew he invested in real estate. And I said, hey man, I want to pick your brain.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm thinking. This is what my uncle did and talked to me about when I was a kid. I want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to get to the point where I can just buy some properties and I could retire from the Navy and that's going to be that.
Yep.
He said, okay, well, let's have lunch. He's like, why don't you pull up some of the deals that you're thinking about, bring it over, we'll analyze them, and we'll talk about it. I said, okay, well, I'm bringing my wife with me. I was like, I need you to help me sell her on this because she is not,
She's not into it.
after
She's
what
had a
happened
bad
with
I
the
mean,
last
experience.
home.
jaded. You know what I mean? Like
I felt that
you
way
were
too.
too. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I was like, I was willing to give it a second chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, okay, come on out. We'll have like a little get together. He's like, my wife will be there too. We'll have this little lunch and whatever. So I go and they lived in, where did they live at the time? It was in town, like close to Chinatown in one of the high rises. Right?
Okay.
And they were like, yeah, come on out. And let's pick up some food. I said, I got food. I'll get the lunch since you guys are, you're
Right, you're
providing all
helping
this
me.
all
value.
this value. Yeah.
So I go down to Chronic Tacos, right? Because now we're plant based, me and my wife, right?
Oh,
And the
okay.
kids. So they were the only place that had like the Beyond Meat.
Yep.
Right.
So
Yep.
I said, okay, let's go there, and I said,
Yeah.
I can get some tacos finally, and get all this food. And I realized how expensive that place was. And here I was with this $100 bag of lunch of
Yeah.
tacos. I'm like, who spends $100 on tacos
Yeah.
and burritos?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Right. So we get over there and we have lunch. And I showed him like two of these deals that I was looking at. They were duplexes in Chesapeake, Virginia. And, I said, hey, here's, the numbers. Here's what I think. Am I looking at this the right way? Am I doing this right? And he's like, yeah, these are both pretty good deals.
Yeah.
He's like, you could probably go with either one. He's like, just look a little bit more into it, get the inspection done and figure out which one's best. He's like, and if not, get them both. And if you don't want them both, let me get one of
Let
them.
me buy
There
one.
you
Yeah.
go.
So
That's how you know you have a good deal.
yeah. So I said, okay. So I let him have one of them, right? I don't think they actually bought it. But I went and put an offer in on the duplex that I was looking at. It got accepted. And this whole process started back in November of 2019.
Okay.
And we closed on that duplex February 5th, 2020. Now, again, think about the date.
Yep.
Yeah.
Think about what happened the very next month.
Right.
And I said, okay, man upstairs,
He doesn't
you're
want me to do
obviously
this."
telling me real estate's not for me.
Maybe real estate's not a good choice.
Yeah, so
I mean, we can relate to that a lot.
so I was a little taken back, and I'm like, okay, I want to keep pushing through. I want to persevere. But anyway, get into this deal, and everything looks good. The numbers are great. It's cash flowing, right? Then obviously March comes, and one of my tenants, my upstairs tenant, lost their job.
Yep.
Couldn't pay their rent. My downstairs tenant was Section 8, and the government was paying, almost 100% of
Right.
their rent. They had to pay $5 a month.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't get better
So,
than that.
and that covered most of my expenses. Like it covered the mortgage, it covered the insurance, it covered maybe a little bit more than that if something came up. Like there was a couple repairs that needed to be done, so I got those taken care of. But that was it. I was like, I'm just breaking even, and in some months I'm a little negative.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, I got to figure something out.
Yeah.
And real estate investors, even me being a new real estate investor at the time, you get very creative when you're trying to figure out a way to make something work that fix something that's broken.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, there's got to be a way. So I started doing some research, and I found out the county of Chesapeake was actually doing a rent repayment program for people in the county
Nice.
that are under, certain situations. They lost their job, whatever it is, due to the pandemic.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, I said, okay, let me see what this is. I check it out, called them up, and I said, hey, how do I get, my tenant, in this program? They said, well, they have to apply. So I reached out to my tenant and said, hey, look at this. And they're like,
Here's
oh,
the
yeah,
application.
Sure. Yeah. We'll do that. No problem. Thank you for not, pushing the eviction and this and that.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, cool. And I'm waiting. I'm like, hey, a month goes
What's
by.
going on?
You submit the paperwork yet?
Right.
Oh no, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I was like, okay, what are you doing? You don't have a
Yeah.
job. You're
Let's
not
go,
so
dude.
busy. What's going
Yeah.
on? So I was like, okay. Another month goes by. I'm like,
Oh my
okay.
gosh.
Now I feel like I'm getting taken advantage
Yeah.
of.
Yep.
So I went and filled out all the paperwork, and I said, look, here you go. Just sign this.
Just sign the paper.
and I'll submit it for you.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I'm waiting. Took like 2 weeks to get him to sign it.
It's crazy.
Dude.
Finally get him to sign it. I get it submitted. They back paid all the rent that he owed, 6 months worth, and all the late payments.
Wow.
So
I was
Amazing.
like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
And now that property actually cash flowed $950 a month.
That's
Amazing.
My first
unreal.
deal.
That's
Yeah,
great.
unreal.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I feel better now.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do this.
Yeah. But during that time, I was going to real estate meetups, and I was meeting people and just getting
Nice.
acclimated, talking to other people about, what type of real estate they're into.
Yep.
I started learning about multifamily. And I said, okay. I was like, this looks pretty neat. If I invest passively as a limited partner, I don't really have to do anything.
Yep.
And, because I was super busy with the Navy. And
Yeah.
I was like, and this rental was killing me.
Yeah.
Like, normally you get those 2:00 in the morning phone calls, because something happened, a toilet broke, whatever.
Right.
I was getting those 2:00 in the morning phone calls too for the same thing, but it was, 7:00 in the morning on the East Coast.
Right.
Yeah.
Or 8:00 in the
Right,
morning.
right,
And I'm
right.
like,
Yeah.
why couldn't this happen at 2:00 in the morning your time?
Yeah.
Because it would still be like 10:00 at night for me.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of brutal. But I started learning about multifamily, and I said, okay, I want to get into a syndication.
Nice.
So I said, I'm going to sell this duplex. So I wound up selling it, and for a profit too, because
Nice.
of, at the beginning of the pandemic, after that first year, home
Real
prices
estate
Dipped
started
down
going
and
up.
then everything
That
just
was a great
went
time to sell.
crazy.
Well, I sold right before the best time. So like I sold it, and then like literally 3 months later, I looked up the price.
Shot up.
You're like,
And it was
oh
it was
my
worth
gosh.
40 grand more than so I sold it for 165.
Yeah.
Okay, what did you buy it for?
I bought it for 150.
Okay.
So when I sold it for 165, I was like, okay, cool. I made a little bit of a profit,
yeah.
right? And then I looked like 3 months later, and it's worth 250.
And you wanted to
250.
throw up.
And the guy that I sold it to, he's like, I'm not happy, with the condition it's in. He's like, but it's
I have
fine.
equity, yeah.
Well, yeah. And then 3 months later, I was thinking about reaching out to him, be like, hey man, how do you like it now?
Are you happy now? Are you happy now? Yeah.
Maybe we should have waited.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
That's so crazy.
But yeah, so I took that, and I took some money out of my thrift savings plan because they were doing that COVID relief thing, and I got into a syndication.
Nice.
And I was like, okay, this is pretty easy. And I want to do more. So I was going down to a conference in Phoenix, RubeCon last year, 2022.
Okay.
And, while I was there, I was in the process of taking out a HELOC on my home as well. So I wanted to use that to also buy more real estate.
Totally.
So I had this money that was kind of just sitting here. I'm like, okay, let's do this. And when I go down to RubeCon, my friend reaches out to me and says, hey, we got this kind of small, it's 36 units out in Oregon. And, I'm only asking a few people if they want to come in on this. This was somebody who I had on my podcast as a guest.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
So I said, okay. She's like, hey, you had me on your podcast. I really like you. I'd like, if you want to invest with us, here's what the numbers look like.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, let me just do a little bit of research on the area and stuff, and I'll get back to you. Checked it out and said, this
Looks
really
like a good deal.
Looks good.
Literally, like the apartment complex is right next to the university. And
Oh,
I'm like,
nice.
okay,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
could be good student housing. I was like, this is good. So I invested in that one. And then 2 weeks later, got into another syndication with the same people that I invested in the first one.
Nice.
And I said, okay, this is pretty cool. Now I'm in
Yeah.
3 syndications.
Yeah.
Rolling.
And I don't have to do anything. And I'm getting these monthly dividends and
amazing.
quarterly payments. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this is pretty cool.
I like this. Yeah.
And long story short, because I know I can talk. I'm from New York. I ramble. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
But so long story short, I wound up making a quick switch from single family to multifamily.
Yeah.
Now this year, I'm trying to be more of an active investor and raise capital. And I've been working with some other partners. We've been underwriting some deals. They are not panning out right
Yeah.
now,
Yeah,
which it's okay, but I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep underwriting
100%.
deals until we
Yeah.
find the one that sticks.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you could take 100 deals before you get 10 that are decent, and then
100%.
one that's going to
Actually work.
that you're going to
Yeah.
make a move
Yeah,
on,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So I'm just going to keep going, right?
Yeah,
Be
yeah.
persistent. But anyway, so just this past month in June, on June 2nd, which was my birthday,
Oh,
and I got a notification. I got an email from one of the people that I invested with, and they said, hey, we just did a cash out refinance and we're going to pay all the investors. And I got a nice fat 21% return.
Wow.
Right there on my birthday. I said,
You're like,
okay,
yay!
happy birthday
Happy
to me.
Cool.
birthday to
Yeah.
you! Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is pretty neat. And that was the first syndication I went into. It was purchased at 6.6, and when they did the cash out refinance and they got it appraised at 13 million.
Wow.
I was like,
How much
That's
longer? How much
amazing.
later was that? How many
20
years?
months.
That's
20
it?
months?
20
Wow, they
Wow.
stabilized
Did they
so
do?
quick.
They did you just like a major value add? They rehabbed everything.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Or yeah.
Yeah,
Sick.
all the ones that I've gone into are all value add.
Yep.
They're all doing renovations, and as people are moving out and there's turnover, they start renovating those other rooms.
Wow,
So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
yeah,
Wow,
but in a
there's-
20-month span, they were able to get it.
That's great.
Double
But
the value.
More than
They're-
double the
Yeah.
value. That's so wild.
That's an amazing deal.
Yeah.
So you're now focused on smaller multifamily, meaning like 100 units or less?
Yeah. So
Okay.
right now, I think the biggest one I'm in is 102 units.
Okay.
But the other is 54, and the other one's 36.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's
So,
great.
And
Yeah.
and all as LPs right
Right
now.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But the stuff that I've been underwriting and looking at, one was a 42, one was a 58, and the third one I think was even smaller. It was like a 24.
Nice.
Love
Nice.
that.
Nice. Yeah.
What areas are these multifamily units in?
So one's in Virginia,
Okay.
Roanoke, Virginia. The
Okay.
other one is in Monmouth, Oregon,
Oregon.
right by the University of. I think it's Monmouth University, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one is in I'm going to mess this up. Waxahachie, Texas.
Wow.
So just Dallas.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
just
yeah.
call it
Dallas.
Dallas.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Nice. That's so interesting. And I love, thank you for sharing like that whole, it was a snippet, but it was like a long timeline.
It was a quick trajectory from
Oh, I can go deeper. I can
Yeah,
go
yeah,
deeper.
no, I love it.
It'll go
I
even
love
longer.
it.
I don't know if you
I-
guys have the rest of the day to.
Yeah.
I wish.
I mean, don't tempt me. I'll talk about real estate forever. So let me talk about that. Like, you really have had a lot of perseverance, not only in like just your personal life, but also in your real estate journey, right? Like
Yeah.
your first deal, was a house that you ended up having a short sale and lost a bunch of money on, but you didn't give up,
And
right?
you could have.
You could have easily given up. So I guess my question would be, what do you think that was? Like, why did you continue to persevere? Like, what was it?
Why do you have the glutton for punishment gene?
Yeah, I feel like we all have that. That's why. But for a lot of people getting started, things get hard and they stop. They
Yeah.
give up. And it doesn't work for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
maybe it is a gene, right? A glutton for punishment gene, like you said. So I'll talk a little bit about my dad, right? So besides what I learned from my uncle about real estate, now my dad, he spent a lot of his life doing the wrong thing, right? And then he finally got his act cleaned up, and he started his own trucking company, right? Doing air freight out of JFK Airport.
Okay.
And it was doing really well. So I actually used to help him doing the books. Like I would do the QuickBooks for him and stuff.
cool.
Oh, nice.
And kind of help him with that. And I started seeing like some of the numbers, and I'm like, Dad, you're making a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what's going on with this?
Yeah.
And then I saw like payroll and what he was paying all the other truck drivers and stuff. So I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. So I got into the like this whole thing about like seeing how a business is run.
Right. The back end.
Yeah, because this is like when the internet first, came out like really publicly. We had the dial-up AOL and all that stuff.
Right.
And the QuickBooks program that we had was like, it was the CD. You had
Yep.
to put it in.
I so
There
remember
was
all
no
that.
connection
Totally.
to the internet with it.
Yep.
The most you were doing on the internet was you got mail.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was good to see that side of it. Now, of course, after September 11th happened, he had all of his eggs in one basket, doing the air freight, and that was a wrap.
Yeah.
After that happened, his business tanked, and he wound up getting his house foreclosed on. This was after I
Oh,
joined
wow.
the Navy.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was really tough to see my family go through that. But what I saw, something from my dad that I saw, even after everything that he went through in life, he could have easily just given up right there. And he almost did. He actually got to a point where things were really bad. And
Yeah.
I had to drive up from Virginia and
Yeah.
sit down and be like, hey man,
Yeah.
we're all here for you. Like,
Right.
don't do something stupid.
Yeah.
Right. So that was an eye-opening moment for the entire family, right? But more so for me to see what he went through, lost everything, was coming back, and then lost it all again. And he was at a breaking point, right? And he had other people lift him up and help him get through that. And that's when I realized, like, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't try to do this alone.
Love that.
So that's one of the lessons that I've taken from that, right? Just from those situations. But I got to see the inside of that. And I always had that conversation I had with my uncle in the back of my head.
Yeah.
So real estate's always been there. Even when I've been through some pretty rough stuff, with some deals or just things not working out, I always look back to that conversation and say, you know what, it's going to work itself out.
Yeah.
I just got to
totally.
keep pushing.
Yeah, that must have been a very good reminder to have. You know what I mean? Because it's almost like you had a proof of concept from somebody that liked and trusted, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I know it works for him. It's got to be able to work for me as long as I keep going. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is really, really cool.
Well, and you've seen your family having to overcome difficult situations, and so it was modeled for you almost. So in a sense,
it was definitely all stuff that culminated into what I know as my own business structure today.
Yeah.
Right. Just being able to see all those different sides of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
that's a good caveat into what your business looks like today.
Yeah.
What you have a lot going on. You just talked about the
Unfortunately,
investing side, but what all are you doing? What all does your business look like?
So okay, you guys are catching me at a transition point right now. So I literally just did a podcast episode of my own podcast talking about accepting failure in certain areas. And so I'm going to get into something that is not so fun for me to talk about. And not too many people know about it. Unless, I've talked with you personally about it, or, I kind of briefly touched on it on my podcast episode. But anyway, I started a local business out here, doing inflatable nightclubs, right? Because I thought this was going to be super cool.
No way, really?
Yes.
Inflatable
Dude,
nightclubs.
crazy.
That sounds cool.
It does. It looked cool.
Yeah.
And people that were, looking at it said, this is really great. This is going to be huge. This is going to be so cool. And I start this business, right? I buy all the tents. I get this warehouse in China, right? So I went through a couple different people, and I finally found the one that was going to make the one that I wanted, right?
Right.
And they put my logo on it. They put all my stuff, and I started ordering all this really good DJ equipment, like lighting, smoke machines, speakers, all off Sweetwater. So I was paying
top dollar,
top
Sweetwater's,
dollar for
all
this
the
stuff.
good stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm not skimping on this. And so I put it all together, and in November, I did an event for free for my buddy at his job. Excuse me. He had a little going away party for one of his workers, and we set everything up, did everything for free. It was great, and I just got to record a whole bunch of content.
Love it.
I hired a videographer to
Yeah.
come out, and we recorded so much stuff. And I was
Yeah.
like, cool, I've got all this content I could use now. So I started blasting it all over social media, right? And I started running ads, and I hired a marketing team, and I was paying this marketing team a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. And then in May, I was like, this really isn't doing anything. I made one sale since I started it, and I've dumped about 40 grand into it. So I'm 40 grand in the hole, and I'm like, how long am I going to let this burn a hole in my pocket
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
before I have to accept that it's not working. So, and throughout, now I want to let you know too, throughout this process, I did a couple different things. I changed, I lowered prices. I did sales. I did different events. We even changed the ad theme. So around prom time, we were like, hey, you looking for something for a post prom party?
Oh, yeah.
This is, keep your kids safe, have it in your backyard.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Graduation party. Hey, you want to have your graduation party be the talk of the town?
Yeah.
Rent one of these, you know?
Yep.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Crickets. I had a couple of people call and say they were interested and say, yeah, I think we're going to get one of these, for a birthday party in the future. I said, okay, great. When do you want to book it? So, oh no, we'll call you
give
back.
you a call back later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They never called me back.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. So I get it. So a couple weeks ago in June, I was in one of my mastermind groups, and we were just having a conversation about what we were working on that's working and what we were working on that's not working.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of brought this up and I said, look, here's some of the things that I'm doing. But this one thing in particular is just burning a hole in my pocket.
Yep.
And I feel like, I just need somebody else to tell me so I can come to the actual realization, because me telling myself, it's like,
don't give up.
I can make this work.
Yeah.
I can make this work. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I kept telling myself.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's just a matter of time. Brand awareness. I just need people to know me and see it. Well, I gave it 6 months of brand awareness, and like even my marketing team was like, hey, we're kind of done with the brand awareness thing. We have to go into something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
So I brought this up, and one of the guys in the mastermind was telling me like, hey man, like, why don't you just shut that down and focus on your other business that's actually working and scale that.
Yep.
And that other one was my podcast editing business.
Yeah.
Love
Right.
that.
So and that I started to scale that. I had some great partnerships. As a matter of fact, I have 2 calls with potential partners after this recording.
That's great.
Love that.
In about 2 hours. I have 2 different phone calls that I'm going to get on with 2 different teams that want to use my service.
You guys.
great.
Yeah. That's unreal.
Actually, one of them wants to like white label the service and sell it
nice.
as their own. I'm like,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So,
super cool.
so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Big time.
So a lot of things happening there. Had a couple other partnerships come up. Like we partnered exclusively with Podbean. So like they put us in their newsletter and they said, yeah, this is the editing team you want to use and this and that. I was like, okay, this is great. So I'm getting really good like publicity and marketing.
Yeah.
And I didn't pay anybody for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was
cool.
just off my reputation and word of mouth. So that started doing really well, and the partnerships that I had with it were doing well. And I said, okay, this is where the focus needs to go. This is where I need to work on and scale. And then of course real estate investing, like I'm underwriting deals and I'm still looking there. I still do I have my meetups that I go to, and then I also host a meetup every month.
Yep.
And and that's just great networking events, right?
100%.
And that's the biggest thing is like, hey, I'm going to keep networking. I'm going to keep doing what I do, and it's going to work itself out,
Right.
And now with the podcast editing business, like I said, like these calls that I have later this afternoon, and then some other stuff I have that's happening next week. Like there's some big things that are happening,
Yeah.
and I'm
So
like, okay,
cool.
this is going to be like the thing for me.
Yeah.
And it's kind of something that I've become known for in the space. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm known in the real estate space, but I'm also known mostly as a real estate podcaster.
Yeah.
So like that's what people know me as. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I need to capitalize on that brand
Right.
Yep.
because that's what people know me as.
That's
So
what's working.
I recently like changed my LinkedIn. Like I changed it from like the financial coaching stuff to I help people start podcasts and grow
Love
their
that.
network and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I need to go with what's working. And then honestly, it's something I really enjoy and love doing, and I'm more passionate about it.
Yeah.
So maybe, the way I'm looking at it now is the whole time, like my focus and effort really was there.
Yeah.
And the other stuff I was working on was kind of just on the wayside where I thought it was something I wanted to do,
Yeah.
but my passions lied elsewhere.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You thought you wanted to do those things, but they were kind of maybe being distractions a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something to be said about, and this is super important for everyone, getting very clear and focused on the things that are working very well.
Yeah.
Because us as entrepreneurs, and I want to ask you about this after, we have the tendency to always want to build, and there's always this new thing, and there's
Shiny
always
objects.
this shiny objects, and there's always this new idea that's going to work, or we see somebody doing something, we're like, I can do that too. And oftentimes we get into a bunch of stuff, but we're not good at all of the things because we're trying too many, right? And a lot of times all it takes is us to focus back in on that one thing that we're passionate about, that is actually working, and let's just build that thing and then just see what happens after that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. You become a jack of all trades, master of none.
That's literally what I was
Exactly.
thinking in my
yeah,
head.
totally. So, but
I know you were. That's like I felt it. So I was like, I'm gonna say it before she.
there
does.
you go. Love that. So I'm curious, where did the entrepreneurial spirit come from? Because you went from military W-2
Yeah.
to entrepreneur. A lot of people have like a hard time with that switch. Like, what do you think that was in
Well,
you?
when did you retire from the military?
This past December.
Congratulations.
wow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice,
Well, technically,
nice.
really like July of last year, end of July is like I've been home since then. I did a skill bridge program, so it's like I got to do 3 months of working at my real estate brokerage, and then like I took my 30 days of leave at the end, and then I retired December 1st. So, but technically I've been home for almost a year now.
Wow.
So
How has that transition been for you?
tough.
Really?
Has it?
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I think the family's not used to me being home as much
Oh,
anymore.
yeah.
And it's funny because I had mentioned to you guys earlier before we were recording, like on the way here, I was listening to Bigger Pockets, right? And I was listening to the episode with David and Brandon talking. And there was a couple moments that I was just like, whoa, like just listening to that episode. Like one of them was, you know, when they were talking about what their definition of financial independence was, right? And he's like, you know, I really thought it was, you know, when I was making enough money that I could be home with my family all the time. He's like, and he's like, and then I did it. And like for 6 months, we traveled all over the world. We went to all these different places. And then it just didn't feel like it was enough. Like that wasn't 100% it.
Right.
And I was like, I feel that like on a spiritual level. Cause like I've been home and it's like, I get all this time now with the family. And, you know, one of the cool things that I love to do with my kids, I'll take them out to the water park, you know, and they love going there.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, I feel like there's still something missing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that, you know, I wanted more in life. So, and I think another piece of it too was just the fact that they weren't used to me being home so much.
Yeah.
So it kind of caused like a couple issues.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we homeschool the kids.
Mommy's like, this is how we do things.
Yeah. So
yeah.
like, and now I'm home and it's like, and my wife even told me, she's like, you're kind of messing up the schedule here.
Yeah.
She's like, you know, the kids aren't used to you being home. So like, yeah, I know you're like doing your podcast thing and, you know, you're doing the stuff that you're working on. However, maybe go do that somewhere else.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I was talking to you guys earlier
commercial
off camera
space,
about like
So
looking for a
funny.
space to have an office and do my podcast and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But so that it was just things like that. Just it becomes so relatable.
Yeah.
And,
Totally.
And so when it comes to the entrepreneurial spirit, I think what really hit me was this self-actualization that I had when I was getting close to the end of my time in the Navy. So it was so I got out here in Hawaii, 2018. I was at, I guess, 16 years in the Navy at the time.
Okay.
And I knew like by the time my tour was over, like this was going to be it. I was going to be close.
This is gonna be it. Yeah.
So I said, okay, I got to figure this out. Like, you know, what's next after this tour in Hawaii?
Right.
And, you know, after we moved here, you know, we all just fell in love with it. And we're like, I don't want to leave. So I said, you know, I was up for promotion too. And I was like, I could stay in, you know, and go past 20 years, get promoted and, you know, make more money, have a higher retirement, higher pension or whatever later on. I was like, I don't want to leave Hawaii. So I said, hey, what do I got to do to stay in Hawaii? They're like, well, no, we really want you to go to DC or Millington, Tennessee
We have
next.
plans for you.
And I'm like,
Don't really want to do
how
that.
about if I say I'm going to retire? Can I stay in Hawaii? They said, yes. I said, okay. So then they stashed me over at the shipyard for a year, dropped my retirement paperwork, and that was that. But throughout this process, like I said, so when I got here, we bought the house. I get to my job over at Pac Fleet, and it was a very tough job because I was the staff XO. I was working some very long hours. It was kind of brutal. And I said, okay, I want to do more, but I can't. I don't have the time. So I got to figure out something that's going to work for me, you know, on this schedule. And so I'm going to start a blog talking about, you know, how I got out of debt and all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's when I started Average Joe Finances. It started off as a blog. And then a buddy of mine came up to me and said, like, not too long after I started the blog, and said, hey, Mike, you know, I know you like to talk to people. You've got the gift of gab or whatever. You know, you're from New York. You can't shut up. So why don't you start a podcast? He's like, podcasts are like really going to be a big thing. Like they're really starting to blow up right now.
100%.
And I'm like, maybe after I retire. You know? He's like, no. He's like, I'm telling you right now, start. Even if you just do one a month. I said, all right, man. You twisted my arm. So I started the podcast. And I was like, once a month. I was like, I want to do once a week.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going for the gusto.
Yeah.
I didn't realize what I was getting myself into.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Because at the time, I was a one-man show.
Yeah.
And it was, I didn't have a team. I didn't have nothing. It was, I recorded it. I edited it. I put everything together.
Yeah.
I uploaded it and then I put it on YouTube.
Wow.
And I made the audiogram, like whatever. Actually, I wasn't even really making audiograms back then. I was just sharing like the podcast artwork and saying, hey, go listen.
Right.
And it was tedious.
Yeah. It's
a
I'd come
lot.
home from working, 10, 12-hour
tired.
days.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to edit an hour a day to make sure my episode can come out on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do that. And then my family's like, hi, we're
Yeah,
here.
Yeah.
You
Nice
know,
to see
I'm
you.
glad you're done editing, but we're putting the kids to bed now. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. So 6 months, it took me 6 months too, but I was getting burnt out. And that's when I decided to actually outsource and hire a team.
Yeah.
And that's when I learned the power of who, not how.
Yeah.
Game changing, right?
It is game changing. And I was like,
Life
okay,
changing.
so you're telling me I can hire somebody to do the things that I don't like to do or I'm not good at doing? Okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the podcast started to really gain traction, and then I was able to monetize it. And then when I monetized it, I was able to pay the team, and I'm like,
Unreal.
okay, now it's like a self,
Performing.
it's a well-oiled machine
Yep.
that,
Love
that
that.
Yep.
takes care of itself.
Totally.
So it took a lot of pain to get here. But again, I think it all goes back to the fact that, I saw, and this is a really long answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's all
great.
good.
But it all
This is
goes
great.
back to, the fact that I was seeing what my dad did with his business.
Yeah.
I had those conversations with my uncle, and it always stuck with me that I knew that after the Navy, I had to do something to make it so that it's going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And and so it was about 2 years before I got out is when I started the podcast and everything. I started doing the financial coaching. I got my real estate license.
Yeah.
I started
that.
doing referrals.
You
as
did a lot
side
of
hustle.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And doing just referrals was great. Like I love being a referral agent because like all I gotta do is give a name.
Give
Yeah.
a name. Wait
Yeah.
for a
That's
check.
Exactly. So I'm actually kind of shifting back to that now as I'm focusing on other things. I'm going to go back to doing just referrals instead of like I'll help one or two clients like friends, family and stuff
Right.
like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be like really active as an agent anymore.
Yeah.
Just got too many other things that are so much more lucrative that are coming up that I
Yeah.
just got to stay on top of.
100%.
Yeah.
And running my own business just feels that much more like to me it's more gratifying, right? Than yes, as a real estate agent, you have your own business, but you're still kind of under the umbrella of someone else.
Yep.
100%.
Your broker.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting, dude. So I'm curious, you have all of these things going on. What does your team currently look like right now?
Okay. Yeah. So this can be fun.
Yeah.
So it started with the podcast editing team that I hired.
Right.
And that was a team of VAs. There was about 10 people in there all together because not only were they doing it for my podcast, but I brought them on to help other podcasters. And that's how I started the podcast editing business. Sorry, I keep
Yeah.
hitting your computer.
No,
No,
you're
no,
good.
you're fine.
It's my hands. I'm Italian.
I-
Yeah,
I
yeah.
talk
I'm
with
a
my
I'm a hand
hands.
talker too.
Yeah.
We're all the same.
But yeah, so I got I hired this team to do my podcast, and we started helping other podcasters as well. And then I hired a VA, right, like my own personal
personal.
VA, to like, hey, I want you to run my schedule. I want you to run my social media. Like, I want you to be me
Yeah.
Yeah.
without being me.
Right.
Like here's my face, but it's you doing
Yeah.
everything, right?
Yeah.
It's just my face on it.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I hired my first VA. It was a horrible experience because I went off of like somebody sent me like this email pitch it was like a Facebook Messenger pitch.
Yeah.
And you get those all the time, right?
All the
Totally.
time.
And I normally just ignore them. But this one in particular was written very well. And I'm like,
Maybe.
okay,
Give
like
'em a shot.
let's
Maybe.
try.
Yeah.
And I paid them way more than what I pay my current VA. And it was for, and the issue was for lack of work, right? It was just a lack of quality. My current VA, like I've been raising what I pay her now as we go because she's growing with me.
Yeah.
Right.
She's doing good.
So
yeah.
what I found out to do, because I asked other entrepreneurs about this, other real estate investors. Actually, I'll name drop them too. Jonathan Farber from the Millennial Millionaire podcast and David Perret from the military from Military to Millionaire podcast. Right. I reached out to both of them because I knew that they used VAs.
Yeah.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
said, hey guys, here's my problem. I hired this VA that reached out to me. It's not working out. I need to hire a good VA. How did you find your good VA? I was like, I'm doing this trial and error thing and it sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, just give me the secret sauce.
Right.
I said,
Right.
look, it's not so much secret sauce. It's just how you go about doing it. They said, go on Upwork, create the job listing, say exactly what you want, and then let people apply for it. And then screen it like it's an actual job. Right? Go through it. So I did that. I put the job description. Basically, I said, here's what I want you to do, and I want you to grow with me. Like this, we're going to start here. And as we grow, so will your pay and your responsibilities.
Right.
Like you're going to grow with me. And I had 24 people apply in 3 hours, right? So I said, okay, cool. I reviewed all the applications. I narrowed it down to 5, and I looked at those 5 like even harder, took one more out, interviewed 4 people.
Yep.
I think my VA, she was the 3rd person I interviewed. And I wound up coming back to her after I did that 4th interview. Like literally, like when I was done with her interview, I said, I'm pretty sure she's the one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But let me get this 4th one done and just make sure.
Yeah.
I get the 4th one done, and I immediately go back to her and
You're
say,
like, yeah.
hey, you're the one. You're it.
Yeah.
You're hired.
I would like to offer you a position.
Yes. So started off, and again, like I said, it was very small. Like I said, I'm gonna use you for 2 hours a week starting off, and we're gonna work baby steps up. And she was still, helping other people, as a VA,
Right.
Still hired out off of Upwork.
Yeah.
Right.
And it got to the point where we started getting so busy with everything,
Like,
and I
need your
said,
full
hey.
attention. Yeah.
I want to pull you off Upwork, right? And I don't want to pay you there anymore because they're taking 20%.
Yeah.
So I want to pay you directly.
Right.
Yep.
So you're getting more of this.
Right.
Yep.
And oh, by the way, I want to change from an hourly wage to I want to pay you a monthly salary.
Love that.
And that's what we did. We changed it to a monthly salary. And then she started taking over everything. Like with the podcast, like she started running all the operations. Literally all my job was to record the content and upload it.
Yeah.
And I was done.
Yeah.
We were using Asana to build out all the tasks. And like I said, here's what I want to have done every week, every month, every day, whatever. Like here's the different daily tasks, monthly tasks, weekly tasks.
Yeah.
And we use that, and we use Slack for
Yep.
communication, right?
Yep.
And now I got like 3 messages when I was on the way over here just for different things that are going on Slack. And, I have my Google Drive integrated to that and Asana. So like everything's all talking to each other.
Love that.
Love that.
So being able to systematize, your team is huge.
Yeah.
But anyway, it got to the point where it's like, okay, now she's working full time for me, and she had just gotten married, right? So I sent her, some extra cash as a wedding gift. And said, hey, congratulations.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things she likes about me too. Is every now and then I'll just give her a random bonus.
Give her a bonus. Yeah. That's cool.
But anyway, she's like, hey, I've been showing my husband how to do this stuff, and she's like, I've been so busy with this. She's like, I want to outsource some of my work to him. I said, do it.
Yeah.
I said, give him my stuff to work on.
Yeah.
And if it works out, then great.
Yeah.
And then I said, hey, actually, what I want you to do is I want you to start training more VAs on, how you do your video editing, how you do your audio editing, all of the stuff that we do with the podcast. Because at the time, like the other team that I had, like I was on the verge of like getting ready to let them go.
Right.
Because there was a lot of things that were happening, like stuff was coming in late.
Yeah.
Some of the content was messed up. And it just got to the point where I was really tired of, having to answer all these messages to somebody saying, hey, I have a problem with A, B, C, or D.
Right.
So I said, since you're working full time on my podcast, I want you to do this and train other VAs on how you're exactly doing it. And so she did. So we trained up a whole nother team, and I went to the other team. I went to the lead guy on there and said, look, I'm going to have to let you guys go. And I did let them go, and then brought my VA in and said, you're going to manage the team that's in here now.
Yeah.
So like I said, remember, you're going to grow with me, right? So,
Yeah.
and now she does. She manages that. She does what she can on her own. And then whatever she can't do, she outsources to those other VAs.
Nice.
Yeah.
But she gets a 20% cut.
That's great.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah.
now she's, able to get some passive income as well.
Right.
Which is something that she learned working on my podcast. So she actually,
Isn't that great?
This is another great thing I want to share with you guys too. And I told her, I said, one day I'm going to have you on my podcast as a guest to share your story.
Yeah.
But she wound up taking some money that she had saved up for travel. And she said, I actually went out and bought some land after listening to one of your episodes.
Wow.
No
And
way.
now she's got this land that she rents out.
I feel like once you get to a place where you can outsource and delegate tasks is when you really can start scaling your business and focusing on what you're good at.
Yeah.
And once we did that, like, it was game changing for me and for him. He has his set, I have mine. But when you find those good people, you never want to let them go because they are essential to really the success of your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That makes it tough, right? Especially, like you said, if you get somebody that's really good, it is very hard to let them go. As a matter of fact, so my VA at the time, I had some people reaching out saying, "Hey, man, like, I really see like the stuff that you're doing on social media." I was like, "Oh, it's my VA. It's my VA."
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, can we hire her?" And I'm like, "Well, let me see if she." And this was near the beginning. I said, "Let me see if she's got more free time because I'd love to give her more work because she's great for me.
Right.
So if I can help her out, let me help her out."
Right.
And so she did. She got hired by another podcaster and real estate investor out in California.
Oh, cool.
And things were going great, but then like things really started to pick up with my stuff.
Right.
And she's like, "Hey, Mike, we gotta make a decision." She's like, "I don't think I can help anybody else anymore.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I need to go full time with you." I said, "Okay, well, let's do that." And she's like, she kind of let the other people know, like, "Hey, respectfully, you know, I'm growing with this other business, and I want to stay on that side."
Yep.
And yeah, so that's when I said, "Look, let's train up some other VAs."
Yeah.
And one of the things we started offering now besides our podcast editing is now we also have social media management, because a lot of people have been asking me about that, like, "Hey, who are you using for that?" And I said, "Oh, it's my VA." And
Yeah.
they said, "Oh, can we use your VA?" Well, now I actually have a team of VAs, so you can get one, and they'll take care of
that's
all your
cool.
social media.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and it's starting to scale, and I'm like, this is something.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And and it's all about, because I was willing to give somebody else a chance and not be I have to be the person that does everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which
which can be hard.
can be very hard to
Very
give up,
hard,
like
yeah.
a lot of that power.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
100%.
And that control. But once
Yeah.
you do, and you realize you're not actually giving up control, you're able to get better at your skill set. And just once you hit it on the nail, though, it's systematizing so that you're not really giving up control. You're just making it easier for everybody.
Right.
Right. Yeah, 100%. But I think that'll be very helpful for the audience, because we get a ton of VA questions. So learn from Mike's mistake with his first VA. We have gone through very
We've
similar
gone through a ton.
situations
Yeah.
with VAs. And so I think that one tip of like making sure you're writing out the job description and exactly what you're looking for, and then treat the hire like a legit hire. Like you're like, this person is going to be an employee, an integral part to your business. So actually that vetting process is a very important one. You know what I mean?
They're a member of your team.
Exactly.
They represent you and your brand.
100%. 100%.
And if you're and you have to rise to that occasion as well, right? Like, if you're in a place where you want to delegate and hire, then you have to be willing to be that employer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And the leadership that comes along with that, and the stability, it's a responsibility. They're not, and it's easy, I think, for us as whatever you want to call us, Americans, just be like, "Oh, it's just a VA," but it's a human being.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I like the way that you word that too, because it is a leadership aspect, and it is looking at them not just as like, "Oh, it's just a VA." It is another person that you're giving them an income, excuse me, that they come to rely on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
So you are their employer. So it's important that you put as much effort into them as you're expecting them to give to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So-
See, because that's one of the major things that I see happening is that people are not necessarily willing to give that effort and put that effort into
They think
their
they're
VAs a
robots.
lot of times.
You
And
know?
they're like, okay, well, I hired them to do this and that's it. And you go do that. But one of the things that we've had to do is consistently train our people. And I think that you need to do that in any job situation, right? Like, you need to offer that. So understanding when you go into it that you have to pour in to your VA, just like you would any other employee, it's something that you're going to have to do. That's an expectation that you have to have. So I think that's also a super important piece to the
love
puzzle.
You know what? I'll add something to this that I think will be really helpful to anybody that's trying to get a VA right now. And, you know, you're going to have some trial and error. The first person you hire isn't going to be
No.
probably the person that sticks with you, right?
Right.
For me, I got lucky. It was my second person that I hired. You know, first is the worst, second is the best. If I wind up losing her, the next person I hire is probably going to have a hairy chest.
Yeah.
That's just the way it works out, right?
Yep.
But what I really want to get at is the fact that, you know, you're going to go through this trial and error with whoever you hire. So one of the things that you could do to make it easier for you to train, right? Because that's one of the things that people are like, oh, now I got to retrain somebody, this and that. Loom is your friend.
Oh, Loom is your best friend.
Record instructions on
Processes.
Loom.
Yeah.
I've recorded videos on like, hey, this is how we do this. This is how we do that. I made a Word document with screenshots on different websites. Like, hey, here's where you go to do
Links.
this. Here's how you log into this. Here's how, you know, here's how this website works. Like word for word instructions that worst case scenario. And I pray this doesn't happen, that I'll knock on wood now that I don't lose my VA. But if I ever had to lose her, I've got all this stuff in place that when I have to train a replacement or replacements, I've got that material.
You're not starting from scratch.
Right.
You've got that.
And I don't
playbook.
have to pour that time into it, right?
And I feel like this is my opinion, and I'm speaking from experience, that some of the VAs that I hired in the past, they failed because of me, not because of them. It was because I wasn't as prepared or organized or had everything documented and in place for them to succeed. I almost set them up for failure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like if you're going to hire VAs, know that responsibility is on you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's part of having that extreme ownership, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, even I look back at my first VA that I hired, and I'm like, you know, that's on me, because here I was, I knew better.
Yeah.
You know, I read through this pitch 1,000 times from other people, right? And here I was, you know, this one was just worded just the right way for me to say, yeah, let's do it. And then I agreed to, you know, pay them in advance and all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh man,
I knew better.
Right. I knew better. Like I got myself into this situation.
But you only learn from doing, and you said it exactly. It's trial and error.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you only get
100%.
better. You only improve. So, I mean, you've come a long way. You're doing so much. What has been the biggest challenge you've had to overcome so far in your entrepreneurship journey?
Sure. Yeah. You know, time management is probably always the hardest thing that we
Agreed.
all have to
I
deal with.
feel you on that one.
You know,
Well, you went from military structure to you have all your time, right?
Sure, yeah, if that's what you want to call it. If you want to call it all my time.
Right.
But yeah, so I think for me, time management is always going to be a challenge. And because for me, like when I get myself into a good rhythm and I free up time because I got myself scheduled and I time blocked everything, and I'm like, well, look, I still have room for this and I have room for this. Maybe I should do something else.
Fill it with other things.
It becomes dangerous for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I got myself into so many things, is like, okay, I started to get really good at one thing and started managing it really well. And I'm like, well, look, I just freed up all this time. So now I can do this, and now I can do this. And it starts piling up. And then you realize, you know, you stretch yourself too thin, and then you get into something that you really want to work, but it's not working, but you have so much faith you can make it work.
Yeah. You're like, why did I
and
do
you're like,
this?
why am I failing at this?
Yeah.
It's because, you know, your time, your mind and your time are elsewhere.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I can relate to that a lot, because I think as an entrepreneur and somebody that always has this desire to want more out of life, whatever that more is, the second you do get some time, you're like, oh, I need to fill it with something. And then you're burnt out and you're like, why did I even do this? You know what I mean? So it's always that balancing act of checking in with yourself and your family and be like, is this in alignment with what I'm trying to do? Or is this just more time to be at peace and learn what peace is and not fill it with something? You know what I mean?
Learn what peace is. Yeah, that's a great,
You know
a great
what I
way to put it.
Yeah.
I think I'm still trying to learn what peace is.
I think
Me
all of
too.
us are, you know what I mean? And the other problem for me is like, we'll set like a goal or something, and we get to that goal, and then we're just raising the bar higher. Like it's never enough, right? And
the goalpost just keeps moving further and further down.
Which
Keeps
is
moving.
okay, but it's like, how do you continue to do that and travel that path without burning out or getting out of alignment?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, one of the ways to look at it, because if you want to look at it from that analogy way, right? Like, you know, always moving the goalpost down, it's okay to get to the goalpost, celebrate, and then move it.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that a lot of us have trouble doing is like, we'll accomplish like something huge, big goals, right? Big deal or something that just came through and you're like, okay, great, on to the next. You don't really take the time to sit back and say, okay, let me revel in this win real, for a little bit.
100%. Yeah.
And just get right into the next thing. And then you wonder why am I getting burnt out?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that sometimes we just need to take a step back and just assess the win and celebrate the win.
Yeah.
And I can see how it's even harder maybe in your industry with podcasting and social media management and being immersed in this hustle culture.
Yeah.
Where you see,
those are the words.
You see everybody doing all these things and what's hyped on at that moment. And you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing that. I need to move the goalpost there. You know what I mean?
Okay, so it's funny that you said that because I saw like now what Threads came out 2 or 3 days ago now.
2 days, 2 or 3 days.
I joined
we are
it.
Not on.
So I joined it like on day 2, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I've been on it now. I think 36 hours total. But I saw like somebody posted like this video, and it was like somebody like going like, oh, I don't know, and the caption was, social media managers telling you how to scale or how to grow on Threads. And it's just like, nobody knows what it is
nobody
yet.
knows.
Yeah, nobody.
But I can tell you so far, what I like about it is that like there's no hashtags, there's no topics for you to go look up. It's just people being people.
Yeah.
And,
like
so
that.
far it seems pretty genuine.
Yeah.
So far I'm a fan.
Maybe we'll go on and join it and check it out and see what it's all about
Yeah,
because it's everywhere.
But again, it's just the beginning. So you got to give it some time for it to get ugly, like all the other social media. It'll probably happen.
So now flip that though. What is the biggest triumph or success you've had thus far in your journey?
Biggest triumph? I would honestly say my podcast itself has become my biggest triumph because it's led to deals. It's got me real estate clients. It's got me financial coaching clients. It got me into this whole podcast editing business.
Yeah.
So it's been something that's been a catalyst to drive me further in other areas of my life as well.
Love that.
So the podcast is probably my greatest triumph. Yeah.
Love that.
Super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I tell you, it's a real selfish thing for us that we have the podcast. We get time with people that maybe we wouldn't normally just have that time with, right? But it also does grow our audience. We get deals from it. We get private money lenders from it. We get
content.
Exactly. There's so many benefits to it. So I'm always one of those guys like, yes, podcasts are hard. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not just this thing you turn on and you're like, okay, easy button, but if you can do it and be consistent is normally what it takes, then there's so many benefits to it. So
most podcasters quit before episode 10.
Yeah.
So
just done.
It's hard.
It is hard.
What is the one like podcasting tip you would give to somebody that wants to start a podcast?
Absolutely. Especially if you're a business owner, right? Or in real estate or whatever it is that you're into. Treat your podcast like a business. Build it under the same, build it the same way you would build your business. Put systems in place.
Yep.
Have the right team, and if you want to do it yourself, that's fine, but systematize it, right?
Yep.
Automate what you can and whatever you can't do yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if you realize, like most podcasters do, like especially if you get real serious into it, that maybe I can't do this by myself. Hire a team to let me know I can help you out with that.
There you go.
There you go.
Check out Mike's team.
Oh no shameless here. Just broadcast all your stuff.
Yeah.
What is the name of your businesses and where can people reach out to you?
Sure. Yeah. So Average Joe Finances is my podcast, but it's also my financial coaching business.
Okay.
And then I also have Edit Pods, which is my podcast editing business.
Okay.
The Pop-Up Club business, I'm not going to talk about because that's phasing out right now. But basically, you could find everything about me and all my links to all my businesses, everything I'm working on, all my social medias at myname.com. So MikeCavaggioni.com.
Nice.
Love that.
So let me ask you this before we ask you the kind of last question. But what's next for Mike? Like, what are your in your future
he says
goals.
He has really important meetings next week.
I know. Well, it sounds like you have like a lot of stuff is going really
Yeah.
well right now, but like just like give us a little shot in the future. Like, what's the plans?
Sure. So, I'll tell you this. I'll start it off with this too. That things were looking pretty grim for a while, right? Like things were looking pretty rough.
Yeah.
Since I got out of the Navy.
Yeah.
Now there's like this upward trend that I'm going through that I'm pretty excited about. But I think what's next for me is really capitalizing on the brand that I've built with being like known as like that podcast guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of sticking with that. And like I said, I've kind of changed my LinkedIn profile to kind of like go that way.
Right.
I'm changing my Instagram to go that way. Pretty much all my social medias, right? To kind of just go with that direction because that's what's actually working best for me.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think that's going to be the next thing for me. Now, real estate is still near and dear to my heart. So that's definitely on the plate as well. So hopefully one of the next things that's coming up is a deal. If I find a good deal that underwrites well, hopefully a multifamily deal will be coming up as well.
That's
great.
awesome.
That's
Yeah.
great.
So
So,
we'll
we're
see.
sticking with multifamily.
For now,
Yeah.
so I'm not opposed. So look, I'm an income enthusiast. It doesn't have to be
I
I
multifamily.
love
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a
I
good way to put it.
if it could generate a stream of income and it's not something that I hate doing, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
Right.
that.
So like again, that's why I started the podcast. It's why I started the podcast editing business. It's just another way to generate a stream of income.
Mm-hmm.
And I have multiple streams of income. It's not just real estate.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, like if a great single family deal comes up that I'm like, hey, I could buy this and I know I could either flip it or, this could be a great single family home that's going to rent for great cash flow. It's going to appreciate well.
Yeah.
I'll jump on
No
that
brainer.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything
Totally.
that's a no brainer, definitely I'm jumping on.
Yeah. Love that.
So
Okay. Last question. Do you want to ask it? You always ask this question.
I thought you were gonna ask it.
Yeah.
Okay.
She always-
Last question is: what impact do you hope to leave with the audience?
the impact that I hope to leave with the audience,
Mm-hmm.
I hope that, anybody that's listening to this or watching this right now, that you'll leave this podcast episode knowing that, no matter what kind of tough times you're going through, no matter how hard things get, no matter how many failures you have to endure, that if you persevere and you push through, you will make it. You will break down that glass wall that's in front of you. And just remember too, it is a glass wall that's in front of you. It's not a rock wall. It's not a brick wall.
Not cement.
It's a glass wall. You can break through it, right?
Yeah.
When you hit
love
the
that.
cement wall, that's the end of life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I can't go any further.
Can't do anything
it.
after that. But glass wall, you can break through. I
I
love that.
that. It's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
It was
Thank you
nice
so
to get to
much.
know you.
Yes, your
I
story
feel
is
like
super cool.
this is the beginning of a relationship, like
Yeah.
a collaboration. That's the other thing. We
Absolutely.
get to collaborate
Yeah.
on stuff now.
I mean,
You know
you're
what I
the
mean?
podcast
So
guy. We have a podcast.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
I was talking to him before we started recording about something about
He
that
has
too.
some
so.
Okay,
tips for us.
I would
So
love
we're
to
we're
hear
willing to take everything
Yes,
on. So
please.
yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Peace
and
out,
We'll see you
everybody.
guys later. Aloha.
It's all good. Get paid, get paid, get paid.